And don't you think everybody wants that to some extent, like to know what they're made of? Everybody wants to test themselves. And particularly in the modern world where you just aren't going to be tested, and certainly not in any kind of physical risk-taking sense. Like your actual life is for the most part very safe, very comfortable. It's like all pretty good. I mean, and that's why we seek out this type of elective hardship where you're like, I'm going to choose this challenge that really pushes me, because otherwise you don't often have those kinds of life-defining moments where you find out about yourself. I think the average American can go years without having anything that really pushes them deeply outside their comfort zone. And actually, since we're on a podcast, and this will be my little soapbox, I mean, and I think that that's part of the rise of depression, anxiety, like neurological, like all the things that stress people out. I think in some ways the response is not having things to actually worry about in your life.
Alex Honnold, welcome to the pod, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for having me.
You're welcome to the garage.
Yeah, dude, psyched to chat with you. Maybe more psyched to session with you. That was super fun. My fingers are tired.
Mine are too.
Just tired enough now we just get to talk and use, the non-climbing muscles. Yeah, man, I've been watching you forever. Really psyched to get a chat with you. And my big thing is that I wanted to thank you on behalf of all climbers for making climbing cool.
Did it make it cool, or did it just make it more annoying because everybody thinks that you climb without a rope? Though you do climb without a rope, so it's perfect.
Yeah, my very low without a rope. But no, whenever I talk to normies, can I just call non-climbers normies?
No, muggles.
You must have kids, yeah.
Actually, my kids aren't old enough for Harry Potter. That's just because I like Harry Potter.
It's just you. They all think I'm way cooler because they're like, oh, you're like Alex Honnold. I'm like,
and then you're like, actually, I am, because I grew up in the same place, going to the same gyms, competing in all the same things. You're like basically the same person.
Where did I go wrong, dude?
Well, you got a job. That's where you went wrong. You finished your education, you got a job.
Yeah.
Bummer.
I liked how when we were climbing and listening to Tool and Korn, I was like, yeah, dude, we definitely did grow up in the same area.
Yeah, we went to high school at the same time, same place, in the same gyms. I mean, that's the things that those are the gyms I grew up in, listening to freaking 90s rock and 2000s rock in the gym.
I feel like I didn't appreciate it then, and now I hear it, I'm like, dude, these guys are good. Yeah. What was it like climbing in those gyms back then compared to now? It was, what was climbing like when you first started?
Oh, it's just so much scrappier. I mean, it's like we both started the same two gyms, Rocknasium in Davis and Granite Arch in Sacramento. And they both still exist, I think. And they're both still so scrappy. I think maybe Recreations had a big renovation at some point. Somebody told me.
They moved next door.
Okay, so not a huge renovation.
No, because those ceilings are still 25 feet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Granite Arch, I think, had a few touch-ups over the years, but basically it's the first generation gym that's, was amazing in 1995 and is maybe slightly less amazing in 2025.
You know what gym was amazing back then was Mission Cliffs.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I remember doing competitions in the big city, going all the way to San Francisco, and you're like, wow, these gyms are epic.
Yeah, I remember that steep roof that they had that then they somehow tore out. Remember that bouldering area that would follow you up? That was ahead of its time when they tore it out for Stairmasters or something, unfortunately. Gosh.
Sad. Yeah, but that's old school gym climbing. I mean, now it's just a whole different world. Nicer facilities, better light. Board climbing is obviously a way better thing now. Settings better, holds are better. I mean, everything is better, and that's why there's so many more climbers now, because the whole experience is more user friendly and better.
Yeah, it was a little more fringe back then. Yeah, I mean, when I said that you made it cool, literally people think that when I go climbing, I'm on massive giant rock faces, death-defying things. But in reality is I'm in a smelly garage with you.
Or you're using a shovel to dig out the sit start to the boulder that you're working on, where you're like, how do I get to the starting hold on this? Somebody pass me the trowel so I can dig out a foothold.
All right, that was just a dig at all of my audience. That was brutal.
See, that's a dad joke.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to ask about this because I dabbed on a almost end of a climb. And so we were kind of making fun of bouldering. You were making fun of bouldering. I would never do that. And you climb the biggest rock faces there are. And I'm curious if there's a big style component there. Like, do you really like doing things in that way and making sure it's is that the cleanest style, the best way to climb?
No, I don't think I care that much. I mean, I like sit start. I like bouldering. I like all the things. I think the ideal thing in climbing to me is the easiest way up an impossible seeming wall. When something is the line of weakness up an impressive face. So you think like a boulder like High Plains Drifters, Bishop. to me is like a nice clean boulder where it's like high start holds, really proud. It's the easiest line up that overhanging part of the wall. Or, something like the salve head wall to me represents the ultimate in climbing, where it's the only way, it's like the easiest way up a wall, a basically impossible wall. So you're like, oh, you follow the hand crack, except turns out that the hand crack is really freaking hard. To me, I hate all the rules and stuff when it starts to feel contrived, when you're like, well, you don't touch the jug and you don't use the feet that are on that other route. And you're kind of like, that all seems stupid. I want it to be a nice clean line of holds up the center of something. And ideally it should look impossible, but then actually be not that hard. Where you're like, oh, that's so incredible. You get to climb up this impressive feature, but it's doable.
I can't remember. I think my buddy Max Zolotukin had some quote about bouldering where it was like, we try to find the easiest way up the hardest line of a boulder without, you want it to be pure. You want it to be the one way up,
you want it to be rad.
But then you want it to be hard, but then you want to do it the easiest way somehow. And yeah, it's a lot of games.
Well, that's the thing is I think that when it all works and you find something that's the easiest way, but it's still very challenging, that's ideal. In an ideal boulder, it doesn't even have an easy walk up the back or something, where like the hard way up is the way that makes sense. Like you want it to feel uncontrived.
So I got obsessed with Evolution, a really cool boulder.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of something that makes sense. You're like, wow, there's a nice line of holds up a huge wall. You're kind of like, there isn't like an easier way right next to it. I mean, there are other sides to the boulder, but Evolution makes sense as a good way to climb that boulder.
Yeah, it's a great line. And I remember looking at the YouTube of it, and it's a classic, Jason Cale, intense
12.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And he's just, I don't know, it's hardcore. And one of the comments in the YouTube is, I don't understand. Some of the camera angles appear to be from above. Like, has this been climbed before? I was like, that's bouldering. Yeah, that's just kind of how it works. But
you're like, no, it's from a crane.
I mean, the reason why I ask is because I'm kind of curious about, what is your vision in climbing? Like, what has always attracted you? Have you always been attracted to aesthetics? Like, Alex, you are well known for lots of things, but of course I watched Free Solo last night.
Oh, you pre-gamed. You pre-gamed. Heck yeah.
Got all sweaty, got psyched, had the anti-hydral after that. And I mean, dude, it's El Cap. Like,
yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, it's freaking
like that's a
El
boulder.
Cap.
That's when you don't quibble about sit starts or not. You're just like, you know what? As long as you make it to the top, it's good enough.
Thanks for connecting to my bouldering focused audience with that. Really appreciate it. It's a style. It's an aesthetic. It's, I don't think anyone that's ever been to the Valley and see it can't help but kind of, look up.
Yeah, be inspired. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel still. You go into the Valley and you look at El Cap and you're like, whoa, it's so big.
I actually have a memory, just hit me, a memory of walking with my dad along some path, and he points out, he's like, hey, that's El Cap. I was like, oh, like I must have been, I think it was
Have you climbed El Cap?
I have not.
Oh, snap. But how hard do you climb on the board? You should be working on the Hydro wall or, Dawn wall or whatever this year.
Could I just like climb one section, camp out, do a podcast?
Well, isn't that how people do it normally? They just climb little pieces and they camp. You spend, I don't know, Tommy spent 17 days on the wall? You could make that work.
And also he grabbed KJ to help him out up there. And,
yeah, he's a boulder.
I know.
Or was.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were young and starting to climb, what pulled you into climbing? Is there a thread there from like what you were first psyched on?
No, I've always loved all kinds of climbing. I mean, I grew up just like you, climbing in the same gym, so like bouldering in the gym. I mostly traversed in the gym. Have my little Walkman, listening to like Megadeth, basically just like traversing in circles around the gym. And so I just always loved climbing. And then, I got into like hiking. I was into like summiting mountains. I climbed a lot of things. We're in Tahoe right now. This is kind of local from where I grew up. So like climbed Pyramid Peak and climbed Mount Delac and all these like mountains as a kid. And to me, that was all part of climbing. Bouldering, sport climbing. I did the competition circuit a little bit. It was never really that good. But basically it all just felt like part of the climbing world, and I was into all of it. Yeah, there's definitely no overarching aesthetic. I don't think there's any correct way to do climbing. And the thing is, I don't think you can be good at some of the disciplines without doing all the disciplines to some extent.
Really? Say more on that.
Well, it's like, you can't climb the hardest big walls without bouldering. It's like basically, or, you can't climb the hardest big walls without sport climbing, for sure. And then if you do a little bit of sport climbing or a little bit of bouldering, you want to do it as well as you can. And then that means you get into all the funny little tricks where you're like, now I've got my Makita fan on a pole and I've got to aim at the crux hold and I've got my stick brush and like all the weird stuff that boulders do nowadays. You're kind of like, oh, let me go back to the van to get my step ladder so I can brush the whatever. It's like basically as soon as you start playing any of the little games, you try to do them as well as you can. And pretty soon you're like into it. Like I'm using anti-hydro and I'm freaking stick brushing. And And even though that stuff seems completely silly compared to soloing big walls, let's say, but it's just all part of the, it's part of the process.
There's actually something I was curious about, is that overlap of the kind of climbing style it takes to be really secure when soloing or doing something super dangerous, and how it relates to the hardest moves you pulled. Like, is it a totally different way that you move when you have to be entirely secure versus when you're trying to pull your hardest move?
Totally different way. I think that's part of the reason I'm just such a bad board climber relative to standards nowadays. And I mean, we just did a board session, and objectively, I'm a fine climber, but I'm not a great climber by any standard anymore. It's just a different thing, because for so much of the climbing that I do, it's about climbing slowly and climbing with control and being secure and, like not falling off. And that just doesn't lend itself to that kind of explosive, jumpy, powerful strength. And I don't know. I wonder about that a lot, because you always wonder, that's like chicken or the egg kind of, where it's like, is it because I spent my whole life climbing slowly with a lot of control that I'm bad at the explosive power? Or is it that I've always been bad at explosive power and therefore gravitated towards things that were slower and more controlled? Because some of that's like fast twitch muscle versus slow twitch muscle. Like, am I just naturally a slow twitch kind of guy? Or have I cultivated that over my whole life because of whatever? It's hard to know.
Yeah, you may never know, but I do feel like sometimes when you head towards something, it's because you're good at it. So
totally.
Dive in. Although I got to applaud you. You were like, dude, this isn't my style. And that's why I like doing it.
It's not that it's just, it feels the most useful.
Yeah.
It's like, this is something where I feel like I get the most bang for my buck. Like, if I'm going to do 3 hours in my garage, I may as well do the thing that helps.
So where'd you head when you did start climbing? Bouldering wasn't even really a thing.
Dude, Lover's Leap. Some of my first soloing outside. We were talking earlier that some of our first outdoor climbing was at Donner, which is like granite sport climbing and trad climbing. Though for me at the time it was top roping. And actually, no, I guess I led some of that stuff. I guess I did my first 13A, but it's just kind of granite technical sport climbing. And then some of my first soloing was Lover's Leap. And then some of my first granite multi-pitching was at Caldome, if you know where that is, like on Highway 88, kind of in the middle of nowhere. But it's like big granite domes.
I just remember first climbing up at Donner, and it's a total playground. And I was guided. My parents hired someone. I was like 8 years old. And we did a multi-pitch. And the guy just looks at me. So I'm like belaying him. And I belayed plenty. And he's like, I'm just going to solo this. Just don't touch anything. And
for an 8-year-old, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting that cutting your teeth around here made you just head more and more towards big walls and towards, I feel like a lot of people grew up in the gym in our era, climbed on plastic, did the comp scene. But the traditional style, the being attracted to that big stuff in the mountains, that's not the path everyone took. That's kind of a more old school ethos almost.
Well, I think being raised in California in the era that we were, in particular Grand Arch, the gym that I grew up in had a lot of cracks, had a lot of traditional features, like all those plaster carved, I learned how to crack climb, and I learned how to place gear in the gym, because I would top rope solo placing gear. I would basically aid solo the cracks. So I learned how to do all the trad stuff in the gym as a kid. But what I was going to say though is I think growing up in California kind of lends itself to becoming a trad climber in a way. It's like we have very good, clean granite cracks all around. Granite multi-pitches an hour and a half from the house. If you think Lover's Leap, it's easy to get up there. And they're also really, really easy granite multi-pitches, like a very forgiving place to learn. And so soloing on the east wall at Lover's Leap was it's a perfect place to learn how to solo and to build up, because they're so easy. It's like now as an experienced climber, I can go back to some of that stuff and be like, what a joy. This is a total pleasure. And, I think about that sometimes, that I've been born in Europe. Maybe I would be a sport climber. Maybe I'd be whatever. Because if you grew up surrounded by limestone, you're just not going to gravitate towards soloing in the same way, because it is more friable, it is more unpredictable. But with perfect granite cracks that are clean and high quality, kind of the medium is very safe. Things can happen, but they're just not going to happen that often compared to climbing on sandstone or limestone. And then the other thing, I think, growing up in California, you just have the whole legacy of the stone masters around you and stuff. There's just so much history. I climbed in Joshua Tree, climbed in the valley. Those are all places where there's just so much history. And, I read all those stories, I was interested in, and it's just hard not to aspire to that a little bit.
Do you feel like back then danger was more of a part of the sport?
Oh yeah, completely built in. I was just talking about this. So a couple of days ago, I was climbing with Nick Berry, who's sort of fellow semi-professional climber, great climber, same era, grew up the same way. And he's done a lot of sketchy climbing in his life. And it was funny because now he's an ER nurse. He's basically like an engaged professional, stable relationship, owns a home, has a real job, all that stuff.
How embarrassing.
Well, no, it's just, I was thinking about it though, because people used to make fun of him. They call him like Sketchy Barry or whatever. Like, and I was like, man, nobody really calls him that anymore. I was like, I wonder if it's because he's like grown up. Or I was like, I wonder if part of that's just because climbing has changed a little and like people are doing fewer sketchy things. Like, anyway, so I was climbing with Nick and we both sold this little easy finger crack and had a great time doing it as we were hiking out from something else. It was like a insane approach up to this thing we were climbing, and we're like, well, we're never coming back here, so let's tag this other route while we walk past it because it's classic and we're never coming back. So it's just nice to like tick a classic. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that used to be very normal in climbing. You're kind of like, oh, if you're up next to this classic thing, you would obviously solo it while you're here. You know, like, why wouldn't you? And I'm like, that's just not cool anymore. Like, nobody does that. Nobody's into soloing. And Nick and I were just kind of like, you know, it feels like things have really changed in the last, well, I mean, for me, 30 years of climbing. But I think a lot of that is because 30 years ago, there was way less bouldering. There was way less sport climbing. And so everybody was trad climbing more. And the thing about trad climbing is you're always soloing to some extent. Like, until you get your first piece of gear in, or until you get your second or third, depending how good you think your gear is, you're always engaging with that free soloing headspace, at least. And now you can easily go a whole year of rock climbing without ever feeling like you're free soloing. You know, it's like you can spend tons of time training on the board and then go send your sport proj and do whatever and be like, I'm climbing all year at my absolute limit, and not once was I scared for my life, which is kind of nice.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You know, you can see why people like that. Like, nobody wants to be scared for their life.
I also think there was just less bolts too. Like, even if you were a sport climber,
totally, it was just more run out. Yeah, it was all just more sporty.
My first 12A was heinous cling and
yeah, Smith rocks. Yeah, notorious for being run out and like
vert too. Like, I didn't those
yeah,
falls
heinous
are,
whips, like heinous big whips.
Yeah,
that's the thing is that the dialogue with risk and all that used to be much more present in climbing. You know, where even if you're sport climbing, you're still evaluating like, can I take this fall? Will I be okay? Like, think of the bolted routes in Tuolumne. I don't know if you've ever done any of that stuff. But those, you know, they might be bolted faces, but you wouldn't call them sport routes. It's kind of like a trad climbing ethos applied to a face. And so you're like, yeah, there are enough bolts that I probably won't be grievously injured if I fall. But you're like, dude, I definitely should not fall.
Yeah, grievously. It's like, I won't die. I'll break my ankle, but like, you know.
Or if I fall in the wrong place, I'll almost certainly break my ankles. But if I fall in the right place, which is hopefully the bolt at the crux, then it should be fine. But those are the kinds of trade-offs that you used to have to think about in climbing all the time, where like, I can fall here, I can't fall there. Whereas now I think in general, people sort of expect to be able to fall anywhere more often.
Yeah, I think this is like the line of thinking I wanted to touch on when I was asking about style and ethic, and just, you know, when you get brought up in that, like, to me, it's deeply intertwined with climbing. And we were just talking about this before. I have no problem with people just climbing on a board and never even rolling their ankle or anything. But
yeah, totally.
There is something about like a style and aesthetic and being drawn to big, giant things. You know, it's not just the danger, like there's something about like the purity and the beauty. And, you know, I just am curious if that's how you got the pull versus just, I want to do something dangerous because it's scary.
Oh no, I mean, the thing is, I don't really like being scared any more than anybody else. I mean, I hate, you know, I've had a bunch of semi-traumatic climbing experiences where, you know, I thought I was going to die. And they aren't the ones that you would think of, you know, it's all random stuff where I'm off route on some trad route and whatever. But so I've had a bunch of like terrible climbing experiences, and I don't want those. I don't like those. You try to avoid those as much as possible, but that's part of climbing.
Part of climbing.
Yeah, but I mean, for all this talk of like style, ethics, all that, I mean, I would never impose any of that on anybody because I think it's great. And, you know, I do so many public facing events now in climbing. You meet so many people in gyms, and it feels like the average climber nowadays started climbing 3 years ago, maybe. You know, most people start in gyms very recently. And I think that's great. I love climbing. I'm psyched for other people to climb. And if somebody wants to spend their whole life only climbing in a gym, that's great. I mean, that's still better than spending your life at 24-hour fitness, just like doing reps or whatever. However people want to climb is fine by me. You know, that said, I've always been drawn to the adventure side of it and like the outdoor adventures and, you know, but not everybody has that draw or that opportunity. And that's fine.
Yeah, I've heard you say this quite a bit where you're afraid of risk or you get scared just like everyone. I mean, clearly you have pushed it to the absolute ultimate levels of risk. And I just wanted to know more about like how you square those, because I feel like most people are like that do like doing dangerous stuff. They're like, I'm afraid of risk, but somehow there's like an attraction. And what draws you to it?
Well, it's not so much that something draws you to the risk, it's that something draws you to the activity of like doing the thing, of climbing the wall, or like, getting to the top, or like doing something new, like doing something that hasn't been done before. I mean, I think there are a lot of draws around the aesthetics or the challenge or whatever. I wouldn't say that I'm ever drawn to the risk. I'd say the risk is always something that you manage to the best of your ability and minimize as much as possible. Well, like with free soloing El Cap, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not drawn to it because it's sketchy. I'm drawn to it because it's freaking El Cap. It's the raddest wall in the world. And the idea of climbing that without a rope seems like incredible. And because the reality is that I was like, I think I could do that. And I think it would be very challenging. And it's like, it's the perfect sweet spot for me in terms of pushing beyond what I've done before. There are a lot of things about it that make sense for me in particular, or did for the last decade or whatever, as I led up to it. But the risk itself was never the draw, because if I was looking to do something sketchy, I could have just soloed it without all the years of prep and training and all that, and just seen what happened. Be like who cares? Let's just see. Why put all the effort in if you just want the risk?
Well, maybe I'm phrasing it wrong, because it's not just the risk, but it's somehow like intricately linked, right? Like if you just want to do El Cap because it's badass, you can do it with a rope. If you just want risk, you could just risk your life on it. But like there's some middle ground there.
I mean, I've climbed it with a rope many times, and at a certain point you're kind of like, but can I climb it without? And, that's the interesting thing. So for me so I'll just stick to free soloing El Cap because it's an easy example. But so I free soloed it in 2017. I think I first freed it in 2006 or 7. And I think I freed it without falling in like 2007 or 2008, had freed it in a day without. So technically I climbed it, say a decade before without weighting the rope. So in theory, I could have free soloed it back then.
Yeah.
But you're like, dude, it feels like such a different world between doing it with a rope but not falling on the rope versus actually doing it without a rope. And, I completely changed as a climber in the decade of leading up to the actual free solo. And that's the joy of it, is like, which is the same process as training on the board or training anything in climbing. When you take something that you think is tantalizingly within reach but just out of reach, where you're like, I think I could do that with enough effort, and then putting the effort. The joy is putting in the effort and slowly getting better at something.
How do you know when you're ready to go for it?
Well, I think with physical risk taking, like with climbing, with stuff that's dangerous, I think some of it you just feel. If you think about it and you feel sick to your stomach, you're like, oh, you're probably not ready. It's like you immediately have to go to the bathroom or something. You're like, oh, I feel unwell. Then maybe you're not ready. But if you think about it and you get kind of excited or kind of tingly, you're like, this is going to be amazing, I'm so psyched, then you're probably ready. But that's all very unscientific. Yeah. And then there's, of course, the slightly more scientific, where like you can try it with a rope, you can climb on it a bunch of times. If you fall off unexpectedly, then maybe you're not ready. It's like.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a big binary thing there where, if you think you're ready for a flash or an on-site, you pull on that just like, oh, I guess I wasn't ready, should have trained, even though I really studied the beta or something. But when you're dealing with something with consequences that high, like, I just feel like you could rehearse it infinite times, and like theoretically you're never ready. Mm-hmm. And just
though, if you want to make it broader, so this is the question for all things in life. Like, how do you know you're ready to get married? How do you know you're ready to have kids? At a certain point, you're never ready for any of those things. You just do them and you take that path. And so I think with certain challenges in climbing, they're probably not quite akin to getting married or having kids, like some of the other big junctions in life. But sometimes you just choose something and you're like, this is the path that I'm taking. I've done all the prep that I can. It'd be the same as like choosing your college or whatever. If you're like graduating from high school, you have a limitless number of options ahead of you. How do you choose which one? At a certain point, it doesn't totally matter which one. You're just choosing a path and you're like, this is the path I'm going down. And so I think that with free soloing, it's like you want to do all your prep, you want to be ready, you want to feel, but at a certain time, you're just taking a path. You're like, this is my journey. Let's hope I'm doing it right.
Do you ever have second thoughts when you're on the wall? Like when I went to college, actually college was freaking awesome, but I knew people who like, it's their first night and they're like, oh,
what am I doing?
Yeah, what am I doing?
Well, yeah, I dropped out of college after a year. So obviously I made a bad choice with college. And now in retrospect, I do see it as like, I did make a few bad choices because I was living off campus. I was living alone and I was terribly introverted. So I had no friends and I was at a college with like 50,000 undergrads or whatever. Berkeley's like insanely big. And so I knew nobody. I wasn't forced to meet anybody because the classes were like 500 people. And so, it all set conditions for me to not thrive in that setting. And now in retrospect, I see that pretty clearly. We're like, oh, that was obviously not a great situation for me. But that set me up to leave college and go rock climbing, which I'm like, turned out to be great for me. So you can never totally judge where the path is going to take you.
Yeah, that was your advice for me earlier. I was like, how come I didn't end up where you did, Alex? You're like, should have dropped out of college. Shouldn't have gotten a job.
Yeah, totally.
Big mistakes.
I mean, in a lot of ways,
sent that climb earlier.
Well, you have better preconditions for success than I did, in that you were almost certainly a better climber in the gym back then. You have gymnastics background. You're way stronger on the board now. So by any metric, had you dropped out of college and focused on climbing, you could have been way freaking better. But on the other hand, maybe you lack the neuroticism or whatever I have that got me into like the big, so it's just hard to know. Because I have a lot of friends where I'm like, you would be a lot better than me, but you're a little too well adjusted. You're a little too like psychologically healthy in a way. Like, it's like your parents maybe loved you a little too much and you just don't quite have the aggressive fire to,
I'll tell my mom that Alex said that she loved me too much.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean though. It's like,
totally.
I think for many people to excel at certain things, you need some kind of extra something pushing you often.
Well, there's just this thing that I see it in you right now. I saw it in the movie last night. When you say, no, I just want to climb El Cap, like I want to do it no matter what. There is like an obsession there that is a level that, I'm going to ask you later, how do you go from good to great? And one of the things you see in people who are greater, they're like, I'm going to do it no matter what. I don't care if I got into college.
Doing the thing. Yeah.
Go.
And focus on the thing.
I mean, is that your superpower? Like, what is your superpower?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have asked like things like that, and especially nowadays because I'm just so objectively bad at climbing compared to people who are great at climbing now, in some ways. But I think if anything, I think my superpower, if there's any kind of gift, has just been like overwhelming sight. Like basically because I think for soloing, you need a tremendous amount of volume. Like you just have to climb a ton to feel comfortable soloing things. And I love climbing. I love taking new climbs. I love climbing. Like I love going to new areas and doing every route on the wall. And I think that love of volume and that psych to climb nonstop allows the sort of preconditions for soloing at a high level, I think. But that's the thing is I don't really have any, all my friends are way stronger than me. I don't have any like real gift in terms of pure performance, but I am willing to go out 5 days a week and just grind at it. And that does get you a long ways. Yeah,
dude, the sheer volume of climbing you do is kind of mind-blowing. And I feel like I want to dispel your negative talk or like this. Sometimes it's like a myth about you that you aren't strong. Dude, you've climbed so many just straight up hard sport routes. It's something that I don't know if people often, they go, oh, like what was free ride? It's like, yeah.
It's 12D, 13A. It's maybe more 13A now. It's hard to say. Like a hold fell out. There's a whole story around it and like whatever. Over the course of a decade, it like slowly changed.
Gets a little slipperier.
Actually, it maybe got a little less in a way. Like, so the crux of freerider, the boulder problem anyway. I mean, originally it was the Teflon corner, which is a separate 12D stem corner. That was always out of the question for free soloing because it's called the Teflon corner. You're like, that's a hard no. And so the boulder problem was always the only option. But so originally back in the day, the boulder problem had this giant jug on it. And then over the years, the jug fell off. And so that obviously made it harder because it used to be this boulder that ended by reaching to the jug. Now,
which part is it? Because I just watched it.
The karate kick.
Okay, karate kick.
So the karate kick is now to get past where there used to be a jug. The bread loaf thing that you match, the sloper that you match to do the karate kick, used to be this fat jug that marked the end of the sequence. And so there didn't used to be another bolt there. It used to be a 2-bolt slab thing instead of a 3-bolt thing. Now, instead of reaching over to the jug, which would have been the end, now you reach over to this slopey thing that's terrible, and then you kind of start the crux, which is the karate kick. So it does make it quite a bit harder. But I'm not sure if this is true or not, but in my perception, the holds have all gotten a lot better over the years. And I think it used to be kind of like grainy granite, and now it feels like the edges have all kind of like flattened out and become like kind of more established. Like, if all the grains kind of come off, all of a sudden the edge is like a flat edge. And then you're like, it's not that bad now. And I've probably also gotten stronger over the years, and so the holds feel a little bit better. But I think when I revisited that with the aim of free soloing, I was kind of like, most of these holds are better than I remember, but it has the harder crux at the end. So it's trade-offs. But anyway, it's like 12D or 13A, V6 or V7 probably.
Yeah. So again, man, I just think you're an incredible climber because when I watch that style of climbing, especially, if I were to think about free soloing something, and I've done plenty of dangerous and some like crappy wannabe free soloing, but I like good holds. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
Like, I can hold this. And for me, watching you on the boulder problem, like it just looks
very insecure.
It looks very insecure. And this is something that, when I asked you, is like climbing when you're at the highest risk, similar to climbing hard moves? Because when I watched you do that, like it was, very perfect and very like, Your technique was amazing. I was like, man, is he just tapping into some deep, amazing technique to do that thing? Because that to me looked like some of the most terrifying stuff ever. Like the thumb press, the really leaning
Yeah, the double
close.
thumb.
Oh,
yeah, but the thing is, had there been a 5'10" around that, I would have used it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do that. But I really wanted to free solo all cap. And in order to free solo all cap, you have to do that 20-foot boulder problem. And so I put in the effort required to make that feel comfortable for me, which, I practiced it a ton. I tried every variation on it, tried every method, tried different sequences, did everything. But I also looked at every possible way to go around that, and there aren't any. There's the Teflon corners, which is out of the question. There's actually this arete in between them, which goes free at 513-ish, which I've done, but it was much harder. And so you're like, well, that's not a good idea. And then, I tried to do other variations. Like I would have been happy to do a 2-pitch variation around it or something, but there just isn't anything. And so I was left with like, this is the easiest way to climb this wall. So I have to do this. And so then you just practice it until it feels secure enough.
Yeah, that other earlier pitch, the slab, free blast.
Yeah, the free blast slabs.
Just can you tell me more about footwork and how you get comfortable standing on tiny, slippery edges? Because, maybe board climbing isn't your thing, but confidence on slick, low angle stuff, like you are world class,
Yeah, that actually is one thing that I'm like, I am good on my feet. That's something that, but that's because my fingers are so weak. That's the... Yeah,
is that
I did
like chicken and egg right there?
Well, it kind of was. Yeah, it's hard to say. I did like a lattice assessment a long time ago, and I've worked with lattice a couple times over the years. Like when I've been during the free solo film tour, I used lattice for several months, and it was actually really nice for me to have some purpose in my life and be training and be all motivated while on this crazy film tour. But the lattice assessment, they had all these phrases in it with, you must be transferring a tremendous amount of weight to your feet. And, basically because all the finger strength metrics were so bad, they're kind of like, oh, you must be compensating with good technique. But so it's funny when you said though that for soloing you like to have good holds. Like I agree that it's nice to have good holds, like it's nice to feel secure. But the thing I like even more than that is to have my weight on my feet. Because I think for free soloing, if I'm standing on my feet, I can stand there forever. Especially if you're wearing TC Pros or like a stiff shoe and you're standing on a good edge, like you could, if you have to, you call for help and someone will come get you 2 hours later and you're still standing there being like, help.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So it's like, I want my weight on my feet. And that means that you can handle pretty small holds if your weight's on your feet. Or something like the free blast labs where there are like literally no holds through the crux of it. You're just pitter-pattering on your feet.
Any wisdom you can pass along to people about how to really stand on tiny feet? And
Practice,
yeah.
and stiff shoes, like TZ Pros are amazing. I see all these people who are like, oh, I really like the Solution comps to like stand on these slabby feet. And you're like, what? It's like, oh, it's more sensitive. Like, no, stiff shoes are the way. Like you want shoes that feel like crampons. You want to feel like you're front pointing.
Yeah.
But
I will tell you, one time I was just by myself in Camp 4 doing laps on blue suede shoes, and I had TC Pros and I had Solutions, and I put on the Solutions right after the TC Pros, and I was like, these are great. I felt just as secure, if not more, on the slab.
Well, people say that kind of stuff, not the way. Like, yeah, it might work for a few things. It might work if it's like brand new and stiff Solutions out of the box. Yeah, so like brand new out of the box, you're like, this is amazing for 4 burns, and then you're kind of like, ooh, it's starting to feel kind of soft. But the main thing is that if you're climbing a 3,000-foot wall, and if you wear Solutions, after 30 feet, you're like, man, my feet are really tired, and my toes are killing me. Whereas if you wear TZ Pros, you feel the same the whole way, basically. One other thing though, for like with the free blast labs specifically, so that was one of the big psychological cruxes of free soloing. It's incredibly insecure, and I practiced it a ton. I tried every variation. I tried to go around them in different ways, and actually, I don't think it's in the film, but for the second free blast lab, I went around half of it and then traversed in. You wind up doing the same crux, and it's all the same difficulty, but you get to skip some of the insecure stuff. And so, I did everything I could to make it feel as secure as possible, but I still had to do the cruxes. And ultimately, the thing that helped me flip the mental switch from like, this seems crazy to I think I can do this, is that I wound up doing in my approach shoes one day as I was rappelling. I was rappelling down the wall, done for the day, wearing my tennies, and then stopped to just like play with some things and wound up doing the whole crux sequence in tennies. And the thing is, because when you're on rappel, like I'm hanging on a rope, I just fed myself a meter of slack with a gree and just kind of pitter-pattered across the slab. But you're like, if you can do this in your tennies, you can freaking do it in your climbing shoes. It just shows a margin where you're like, okay, like if you just trust the rubber and lean in and stand there and your approach shoes stick, then your climbing shoes definitely do.
So the trick there is just trusting your feet. Because when I get scared, when everyone's scared, they start like kind of...
Yeah, leaning in and then not waiting. Yeah, exactly. But if there are no handholds, you have to trust your feet. But
So What happened when you slipped off of it and, like hurt your ankle?
Yeah, I just totally botched.
Don't even know.
I just fell off. It was totally stupid. And I was skipping bolts because I was just kind of like romping up it quickly. And I mean, it's even more embarrassing. So I was kind of like, oh, it's just like, honing the psychological side of free soling like you do every other bolt. It's well bolted, so it's safe. But then, I just fell kind of far and twisted my ankle. I was like, what an idiot.
So practice. Yeah, I actually hear this from comp climbers too. I'm like, how do you stand on those like terrible dual tech
in a lot of ways, I think comp climbing is more extreme slab climbing now than hard slabs outdoors because people are doing like run and jumps to no text footholds and things. And you're kind of like, really? Like, it's crazy.
Carla was like, dude, we're going to see that on big walls. We're going to see run and jumps.
Well, we kind of almost just did. That guy, Pietro Viti, is that his name? The Italian kid. He just freed Lurking Fear, did the second ascent like 30 years after Tommy. But he did this giant dyno-y thing past the crux, apparently, which nobody's been able to do. And a lot of people have tried. So you're kind of like, but he probably did some kind of run and jump thing.
Good for him. Yeah, I love seeing the new techniques. Dude, it's funny that you said something about lattice. I was talking to Tom Randall on the pod a while ago. I was like, what are some just standout people that you tested? Because he gets to see everyone, right?
Was I a standout negative?
So I'm going to say this. It's going to sound like I'm giving you crap. I'm actually saying something very nice.
Oh yeah, let's see how this works.
He did call you out. He was like, Alex Honnold, extremely, what did I say? Something
overperforming for his strength?
Yes.
That's how you frame it.
But how I hear that is that means you are an incredible climber.
Or you hear it as incredibly weak, and that's the trade-off.
You say it however you want to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here to glean information from someone who gets every iota of their ability out when they climb. And he actually pointed out just your mental ability, and not in like the sense, oh man, like he doesn't get scared or whatever, just that ability to use what you have, which is a skill, man. Like, it's what you want, right? You want to be able to show up.
To squeeze all the juice out of the fruit. Yeah.
Yes, dude.
Yeah, I'll say my fruit is a withered husk. I've gotten all the juice I can out of it.
Another dad joke. Yeah.
Maybe that's true.
Let's take it to maybe sport climbing or it could be board climbing. I mean, actually, I saw you on the board. Something that was interesting is that if you did a move, you actually didn't drop it again. Like that, that undercling to that little crimp, and then you went under. Like you did not do the move in your first couple of tries, and you did it. I don't think you fell there again.
Yeah, but then there are other things where I'm like, here's how to do it, and then I blow the starting foot 6 times in a row, and you're like, God damn, it's so annoying on the moon board. I wouldn't say I'm actually that consistent with that stuff because some of the things on the moon board, I just feel like if I hit the hole just right, and then you just like don't quite get it for a bunch of tries, and you're like, God damn, that's frustrating.
Very important. Quick break while I tell you about today's sponsor. You. That's right, you. Thank you to all the patrons who help make this show possible. Join them so you can get episodes early before anyone else, and those episodes are ad-free. As a patron, you also get to submit questions for upcoming guests. The answers to those questions are only available to patrons. Follow the link in the show notes to join now. You also get access to a private Discord where you'll find me and other people who want to go from good to great. Okay, back to the pod. Yeah, tell me about how you think that you get every bit of your ability out on the wall when you're climbing.
You just try hard. And I think I'm maybe less encumbered by a lot of the psychological baggage that some other climbers are, maybe. And I've started to think this, having climbed with some people who seem all caught up in their head about, like, what does it mean? Is this hard? Is this easy? Should I be able to do this? Can I do this? And at a certain point, you're like, who cares? Just try your best. Either you do it or you don't. Like, see what happens.
Were you always like that?
I mean, a little bit. I think that's another thing actually earlier you asked, superpowers. I'm like, I do think that I probably have less going on for better or for worse in my head than most. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people are just caught up in all kinds of like, what do people think about me? What does that mean? Does it matter? Do I care? And I'm like, I just don't freaking care. It's like a placid lake. But I think I'm just less conflicted than most. And so I think that allows higher performance in some ways. Actually, I mean, and that's the thing with the board session. Like, I think I've been really struggling with dry skin the last week or so, and I don't know what the deal is, but at a certain point, you're like, it's fine. Like, it's all training. Like, either way, my fingers feel blasted. They feel blasted, sadly, from dry firing off holds, not from actually sending. But I'm kind of like, either way, the point of a training session is to get blasted. I'm blasted. That's good enough. I don't need to overthink it.
How do you just, like, does that mean your mind is just blank when you pull on? You're just like what do you
No,
think
no, it's
about?
not blank. I mean, and obviously I have sessions on the board where I'm like, oh, I'm frustrated because I should have done that and I didn't. It's like super annoying that I freaking botched the last move again. You're like, God, that's so annoying. But I think in general, I may be less burdened by that than some, you know? And I think that when it matters the most, like with climbing outside and with real performance and whatever. Man, I mean, 2 days ago, so I was climbing with Nick and Carla, like on the cool little finger crack thing we were talking about, something up above the lake, went to climb this route. I'm actually pretty proud of myself. So like we trained in the gym the day before, struggling with dry skin, kind of sucked, barely managed to do my new benchmark, did my training stuff. It was all fine, but not great. And then the next day I went out to climb this crack. And my first go, I took the first burn on it, and it's like it hasn't been climbed in forever, and it's all dirty and covered in lichen and whatever. So my first go, I literally just ate it up to tick holds and try to figure out like what the thing's all about. And then Nick tried it, and then Carla tried it. And so when I went again, it had a lot more chalk. We had more of a plan for where the gear went. It was a little finicky because it turns out we just didn't have quite the right gear, so we had to have a plan as to where to place things to make sure. But it was all safe. It's fine. And so they basically talked me through how to do the gear, and then I went up and like tried to send. And then basically before the crux, I turned out wrong-handed in some finger locks, and then had placed a piece in the finger lock that I needed to switch. I wound up trying to shuffle around for a while, like paused in the crux, wound up taking the piece out. It was already clipped to the rope, held it in my mouth, used the finger lock to switch my hands around to switch my whole sequence, and then switched it, put the piece back in, and then finished and did the thing. And I was very proud of myself for staying composed and like not sort of panic, because it all kind of hurts and it's all a little scary, and you're sort of like, oh, the gear's in my hold. And so I'm like, well, let's take the gear out of the hold, figure it out, reset, and then put the gear back in and finish. And I freaking said, my one arm was so blasted from hanging on so long trying to figure it out. So then as soon as I did kind of the crux move, I had to like try to frantically shake the one arm because I was like, oh my God. But I was kind of like, oh, that to me, and I think a lot of climbers will get into that same position and be like, oh, I messed it up, and then just kind of give up or say take or whatever. And I was just like, like, so far I'm still okay, just keep trying. And then it worked.
Yeah, like if I'm on sighting and I kind of get my hands messed up, all of a sudden I freak out, I over grip, I make like a bad clip where I like, pump myself out and I'm just done.
You like super deep lock off, and then you're like, wait, there's a huge foot, I could have just used that.
Well, because my mind spins where I'm like, okay, you made that clip, but now you're tired, so you may not fall in these next moves, but you're gonna fall like in the last bolt. And when you get shook a little bit, like how do you tamp it back down?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I experience all that too. I mean, obviously I completely botch onside sometimes, and I just think that I probably experience that maybe less than average, or like when it matters the most, I sometimes rise to the occasion. But I don't know.
What happens when you can't say take, when you're soloing?
Well, exactly. That's kind of the thing is I think I've been in a lot of situations where you get all frazzled, you get all scared, but there's nothing you can do about it besides taking some deep breaths and composing yourself. And so then I think you just learn how to manage better. Most of my scariest climbing experiences have been with a rope on, because when you have a rope and a rack, you're way more willing to push yourself into the danger zone. Like push, you keep thinking like, surely I'll get a good piece eventually. You're like, I'll just go a little further. And you're like, surely there must be a piece of gear eventually. Like I did this pitch in Antarctica where I basically did it was the whole rope. So it was like 70 meters or something. And I did probably half the rope without any gear, where it's like, surely there's going to be something. Like you just keep going. You're like, there must be. And it was probably like 10DX or something, but it's 10DX on terrible rock, like kitty litter granite. And 10D is like hard enough that you're kind of like, oh, I'm doing some stuff, and there's no pro. And you just get more and more scared because you're like, there's got to be an anchor eventually. Like, can I stop? Can I build something? Like, can I find a crack? Is there anything? And you're like, oh my God. Like the thing is, if you were soloing, you would never get into that position because you would just start up it and be like, this rock is way too bad, I'm bailing. And you would down climb.
Was that like an established route that you knew would work out?
No, I think I forget if it was either first ascent or it was the first free ascent, but either way, it was total exploratory adventure.
Because I feel like that's my trick when I'm sport climbing or doing something that's just like it's gonna work out. Like people have done this.
Well, and that's easy for you to say because, and I do this a lot in circumstances like that as well. But I'm kind of like, realistically, if someone else did this, I can probably do this because I'm better than most climbers, hopefully. And in your case, you're obviously stronger than most climbers. So you're kind of like, oh, if you're on an established sport route and somebody else did it, obviously you can figure out the move because, it's not going to be harder than other moves unless you're on one of the hardest sport routes in the world, basically. But
I don't know. I could show you myself getting scared and failing on like pump lust here really quickly.
Dude, pump lust at one point was my longest lasting project that I hadn't done when I was like 18 or whatever. But it was, that thing is really hard.
Yeah.
Have you not done that?
I just went up for the first time like a couple weeks ago.
Did you get totally smoked? Did you do
Yeah,
it?
I didn't do it. So, I mean, but I will say that.
And it's like 8A. I mean,
yeah, it's
compared to how hard you're board climbing, that should be pretty easy.
well, first of all, it's so good. Like, it's just
But
fantastic.
it's so hard.
That top bit will also, because of my lack of any kind of crack climbing ability, I do this ending bit where instead of doing
There's no
finger
jamming
locks,
though. Isn't it all just opposing
at the top,
side pulls and stuff?
you can like do some like nice finger locks, and I literally just grab a pinch and lay back this like crack that it probably feels more like V5 or V6, and my buddy does it just shaking out along the way. He's like, oh, this is just the outro. It's no big deal. Yeah, I think it's tricky to bring yourself back when you get shook, and there definitely is, there's something to be said for just getting to that position, reining yourself back in like on easier terrain and just building it up and up. But I don't know, I'm still just stunned with the idea of being in a position like you get yourself into sometimes where it's the most consequences. I mean, look, at some point you get into dangerous situations if you climb. Like you have to know.
Yeah, I mean, even bouldering, I think top outs are often very scary because you often do some rad hard boulder and then you roll over and it's like some licheny slab to the top and it's like a little bit wet or a little mossy and you're suddenly like, this is kind of extreme. I'm like free soloing choss up here.
Well, I this is like a terrible memory for me, but I took my wife outside for like one of the first or second times. I put her on Sunshine Slab, and she's like,
the one in Bishop, the really tall V0 thing.
Yeah, like the
where
place
like
you warm up,
where it
like,
rounds it like turns back at the top, and it's like 30 feet taller than it, isn't it?
And I'm just like,
that's a bad.
Oh,
that's a bad move for your first.
It was going fine until I said, by the way, you're in the no fall zone. Just hey.
Just FYI, you can't fall anymore.
Just FYI, falling is not an option anymore. Like I may be down here, but I'm just gonna kind of catch you, Totally froze. She just totally froze. And, it worked out. I like climbed up next to her and I'm like, helping her up. Cause it's actually kind of hard to down climb when you're on the shorter side. But, it's just interesting to think about those moments where I call it like when my bubble pops, where like, I'm like, oh dude, I'm just crushing. Like I'm a superhero. Like I'm so good. And then all of a sudden you're like, this hold doesn't feel like I remember. And that.
Or if you break a hold, things like that.
I think
those are, you're like, the rock is great. I love this route. And you break one hold and you're suddenly like, every hold could break. I'm so scared.
Well, because I assume that you, I wanted to ask, like, are you just in some amazing flow state for 3 or 4 hours when you're cruising up El Cap? Or like, do you have these moments where you go in and out? And then like, how do you reclaim that when like a hold breaks or something?
Well, ideally on something like El Cap, you aren't breaking holds because it's all pretty well rehearsed. But no, I mean, that's an interesting thing. So, I mean, just talking about fear and climbing in general and scary things like breaking holds. I mean, to some extent, when something like that happens, by the time you know that it's happened, it's already in the past. And so the scary part has already resolved and you're done. Like when you break a hold free soloing, I mean, it does shake your confidence in the rock a little bit, but the fact is that you didn't fall off. And so you're basically fine. Like there's nothing really to be scared of now because the scary thing has already happened. It's in the past. And so that's not to say that your adrenaline doesn't spike and your heart rate doesn't race and all kinds of things happen. But that said, the rational part of your brain can be like, and relax, because like that is now in the past and what's ahead of you is whatever remains of the route or wherever you need to go. And I mean that's true for so much of life, because like if you nearly get in a car accident or something, you get that same flood of adrenaline, you suddenly feel all like tense and it's all crazy. But the reality is that the near accident is now in the past. And it didn't happen, and it doesn't matter anymore. Like now, whatever happens is the flow of traffic ahead of you.
Yeah, I hear you. Easier said than done. Like, the thing that's tricky is that having that spike of adrenaline and having your heart rate go up. Like, I don't know about you, but that's kind of when I get to rest on usually sport climbing, we'll just say, like, what I try to do is like slow my breathing, slow my heart rate.
I count my breaths often at rest to like make myself stay at a rest long enough.
Really?
Which is like take deep breaths and you're like, count to 15 or whatever, like 15 deep, slow breaths. I mean, because if you hang on a jug for 15 deep, slow breaths, like you're going to be pretty chill by the time you leave.
I can't remember who, I was either talking to J-Star or maybe it was Tyler Thompson. Someone was like, oh, the whole thing about rests aren't like to recover your forearms, or like to recover your
so lower
mind.
Your heart rate.
Or, well, I thought it was going to be lower your heart rate, but he was like, because he's probably on like 515. He's like, you don't really rest. You just kind of get a moment to like reset your mind and like, okay, I'm okay. And then go.
Well, I would say that's true for really bad rests on really hard routes, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying this like 14 plus-ish sport route in Vegas, which I didn't send before I left for the season, but maybe I'll get to try at the end of summer. but it has a few, quote unquote rests, like little edges that the first time I worked on the route, I couldn't even hold them basically. I was like, this isn't a rest. I can't even chalk up. And then as I got closer, I one hung a few times. And then as I got closer to sending, I could at least get to those holds, chalk each hand and sort of reset and then be ready to start fighting again. And I was kind of like, well, I wouldn't call that a rest per se, but at least it's becoming a checkpoint.
That's my kryptonite on hard sport routes is like, I'll be talking to my buddy who's really good or something. He's like, oh yeah, and then you'll get to that rest there. And I get to the rest and I'm like, these holds are good. They're
but
okay.
You're just getting more and more blasted.
I start counting my breaths and I'm like, I think my heart rate's going up as I sit here.
But some of that's an acquired skill. You just have to learn how to dangle and compose. And then just be comfortable with the pain in your forearms. It was interesting. I mean, I've been climbing 30 years. And so I was trying this sport route just a month and a half ago, whatever, in Vegas. Like for the month of May, I was kind of going up there on and off. And I mean, this might seem sort of obvious, but it's a 40-meter pitch, overhanging crimps the whole way, very aggressive.
What is it? It sounds incredible, dude.
It's at the 5G. It's amazing. It's great. Jay started the second ascent. He called it 14C. I was like, I kind of think it might be 14D. It totally suits his style, and it took him 6 goes. And I'm kind of like, J-Star, I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 9A, but anyway. Now, the guy that put it up, it was like his life project, and it's amazing. It's like this incredible route. It's very hard. And I mean, maybe it's 14C, maybe it's 14D. Either way, it's like, it's insane. But as I was getting closer to doing it, and I was one hanging, my arms hurt as I was kind of fighting my way through the all-over part. And I was kind of like, this is what every other professional sports person experiences. Well, not every, but like, runners and cyclists and like most elite sports are all about pain management. It's like if you're a professional cyclist, your biggest muscles are screaming for mercy for hours at a time. Basically, it's like, like your quads are hypoxic and you're like going hard. And I'm sort of like, and certainly if you're like a fighter or something, like so many other sports, you're experiencing intense pain in so much of your body the whole time. Or like swimming, like if you're going at your absolute limit as a professional swimmer, like your whole scene hurts. And I'm like, in climbing, you don't often experience that. I mean, you do very rarely, but on this 40-meter mega pitch, I was climbing, the upper 25 meters and like my forearms are screaming. And yet I was still managing to do more moves. And I was kind of like, is this what it feels like to be a professional cyclist? I was like, this is psycho. I was like, this is so unpleasant and like deeply painful. Because I spend most of my climbing life, soloing 5'9", and like, it's mostly pretty chill, mostly pretty controlled. Like I don't often experience that level of pain. And it did make me think of J-Star because he's a good friend of mine and lives nearby. And we climbed together a lot over the years. I was kind of like, he literally spends his whole year seeking that level of pain. Hard sport climbing performance are really, I was like, you're just pumped the whole time. And I was like, that kind of sucks. Like, I think I'd rather be soloing 5'10".
It's actually kind of what I like about sport climbing when I do go. And I kind of like that level of try hard that you have to get into where with really hard bouldering, like sometimes you kind of get like a longer, pumpier, you feel like you're kind of almost wrestling a boulder. It's like 20 moves. But in hard sport climbing, you are hanging it out there and it always makes me think of Chris Sharma and him like kind of yelling his way up the route. Whenever you watch Chris climb, you're like, oh, he's going to fall. Oh, he's going to fall now.
But he's still going.
And he's still going.
That's amazing.
And I kind of love that about climbing. But
don't you think that's so rare? I mean, how often do you experience that? Because there's a level of sport climbing where you have to execute well and you have to perform well and you have to, quote unquote, try hard, like do it well. Mm-hmm. But you're rarely in burning pain the whole time.
I don't think I've gotten there in sport climbing because when I go, like I'm thinking of like limestone, cool stuff in Europe that's like overhung. You like kind of get a knee bar. Mm-hmm. You kind of like spread that pump around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you relax your whole body and your arms are like lightly pumped. I know. I was like, man, doing something this fingery where your arms are just burning the whole time. It's like, it's kind of gross, but also kind of amazing. But so it was interesting because as I got closer to red pointing, my goal for each burn started to be more that I want to get freaking blasted. Like my goal is to feel that burning, like that deep, deep burning. It became less about like sending or not sending. So I was kind of like, I mean, and especially with kids and stuff now, so much of red pointing has to do with like, did your kids sleep well that night? Like, did drop off go well? Like, basically there's just a lot of other factors. And so my red point days didn't totally line up with like when conditions are good or whatever. You're just kind of like, well, I'm at the crag. It's not my day, but I'll try my best to see what happens. And so my goal for each burn was just to go up and experience that sensation of fighting, like intense getting blasted. And it became a pretty good motto for me because I was kind of like, I mean, I didn't ultimately send, but I had some times where I was like, oh, I maybe could have or it's close. And certainly I think I'm physically capable at some point. Hopefully I'll get to try again next season. But it's kind of like, well, your days of success, if you went up there and you had that fight, if you got like totally freaking blasted.
Yeah, I know it seems like it's obvious that just having that kind of disconnection from outcomes is so useful, but it also is like, it's hard for me to square it with you doing things where like the outcomes are like death. Do you know what I mean? Where you're like, I just kind of like go.
Yeah, but in some ways, I think that if you do things occasionally throughout the year where your outcomes are death, where it super matters, everything else matters a lot less. It's hard to get too hung up on whether or not you sense some boulder problem when at other times in the year you're doing things where you will literally die if you botch it. Because then on the days where you can botch it, you're kind of like, it's all right. Like, let's just focus more on effort and quality of effort.
So I just watched Free Solo last night, and there's that like clip where they put you in MRI, and like they're like, oh, dude, this guy doesn't have any fear or anything, and then clearly you're saying, no, I get scared.
No, that's all slightly misleading. The whole clip is kind of weird. That was this guy wrote this article for Nautilus magazine. It's like a science magazine, and so the long form article is obviously much more nuanced. The clip in Free Solo is like 30-second little thing, and it's slightly annoying that it's in there like that because everyone's like, oh, I saw the thing in the movie, you don't feel fear, and you're kind of like, well, that's not exactly what they're saying. I mean, I think the takeaway from the article was a little more nuanced in that it's like, yeah, I didn't respond to certain things in the fMRI, but you desensitize yourself over time. Basically, you build up to that.
Yeah, that was the takeaway for me too, but it's kind of connected to what you were saying there, where it's like, you do have things that are super serious, and it just tamps the volume down on like everything else you totally do.
Basically, you get scared all the time for your whole life. It just makes other things less scary.
I feel like the person on the phone with you when you're getting your results didn't quite get your joke where you're like, maybe it's just my amygdala is just tired from being gripped all the time. That's hilarious.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the test that you did in the fMRI is like, you're lying in this fMRI. It's like totally safe, sealed metal box. And then you're looking at black and white photos that are supposed to either be, triggering or sort of soothing or neutral. But they're just like black and white photos of like an electric socket or like a spider or whatever. And you're kind of like, they're just black and white pictures. Like, none of this is scary. But, had they actually put a spider into the fMRI with me, then, depending on the spider, then I'd light up for sure. It was like a giant tarantula walking its way up your leg. You'd be like, no, that's really freaking scary.
So you seem to have, kind of gotten off the treadmill of training your amygdala to be less and less sensitive. Like, it doesn't seem like you're just like rolling the dice more and more and more.
Yeah, though I don't think I was ever trying to take more risk. I mean, I was trying to do harder things, but I've always wanted to make them feel as safe as possible. Like even the scary trad stuff or even the hard soloing or whatever. It's like the goal is still to make it feel totally safe.
But like the reason why El Cap was so badass is because it's so tall and
difficult. It seems insane for sure. But I think to me the point is that if you put enough effort into it, you can eventually make that feel normal. Okay, so here's like my easy breakdown of El Cap. So a third of it's like kind of 5'9" or under. That's just whatever. That's like going soloing at the leap, super chill. And then a third of it's kind of like 5'10" to 5'11" plus, let's say. That's also basically chill for me. I mean, like well within comfort of easy crack soloing, whatever. And then the hardest stuff, you just start to break it down where you're like, okay, well, here's a V4, here's a V7, here's a whatever. And if you line it all up like that, you're like, it sounds chill. Just a couple moves here, a couple moves there, a bunch of exit climbing, walking across this ledge, climbing this other easy pitch, climbing a bunch of 5'8". It's like, yeah, when you stack it all up and you look at El Cap, you're like, this is psycho. But if you break it into small enough pieces, then anybody can do that. You're kind of like, oh, you do a V2 here, a V3 slab here, and a little...
Doesn't sound bad when you put it like that, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like the Enduro corner is like this totally... Actually, the movie trailer poster is me doing the Enduro corner. It's this totally insane pitch. It's so exposed. It's so scary.
It looks amazing,
but
dude.
The thing about it is basically endurance-y climbing. It has maybe like a V3 at the top of the one pitch, and then it probably has like a V4 in the middle of which revolves around this little two-finger pocket pin scar thing. But if you describe it as like some endurance climbing to a 3-move V4, you're kind of like, yeah, anybody can do that. And I think that's how you make something like El Cap eventually feel doable. And then the pitch after that is a 12A that you have to go straight into. But that's probably like an extended V4, kind of an endurance V4. It's like a, 15-move sequence around this corner. You're kind of like, you can do that. That's no problem. Like anybody can do that, or with a bit of practice. But when you add it all up, it starts to feel a little daunting.
I mean, I think that's actually kind of one of the enticing things about that stuff is like, I'm like, oh, I could do V3. That's what I love those moments in climbing where it requires me to pull from every trick I have and have acquired over the years, where it may be fear management, breathing, resting, strength, like technique,
I mean, that probably is the best thing in climbing. Yeah, anytime you do a climb that pulls it all together for you, you're like, oh, that's amazing. It's like draws on everything I've learned my whole life. That's great. I mean, and that's the beauty of things like El Cap or whatever else, where it's like requires slab climbing, requires endurance, requires off-width climbing, like all these random techniques that you pick up over the years.
Did you write down like the entire sequence? Like if you had to recount the entire sequence right now, could you do it? Like for the whole...
Not the whole sequence, but I could tell you the things that matter, and I could tell you, I could maybe piece together the whole sequence again right now.
I remember it from watching because
well, you watched it last night. I haven't seen it in years now. But I could tell you every pitch in order. I could tell you the highlight of each pitch. I could tell you the crux of the different pitches. But a lot of the things I don't need to memorize the sequences on them because they're just easy. Like there are 2 pitches up to Mammoth Terrace, like pitch 8 or 9 or 9 or 10 or however you count it. But they're both 5/7. I've never had a plan for those. I just know where I go on the wall, but you don't need a sequence. You just climb them.
Yeah, 5/7 maybe chill enough. Yeah, because when I get into projects and I'll rehearse in my head, and I think about it as I'm going to sleep. It's like my trick for going to sleep is sometimes like rehearsing.
It's funny because I used to do that, and then actually my wife sort of disallowed me to think about beta because it kind of amps me up before bed. Because like the more I start thinking about beta, the more I'm like, and then you fucking send, and then you're going for it, and then sa, and then pretty soon I'm in bed being like da ba ha, like fired up. And especially on something big like okay, you spend like an hour just being like more sending, so psyched.
You like karate kick her as she's trying to go to sleep.
My wife's like, what are you doing? Go to sleep.
Yeah.
So now I try to think about I just try to go to sleep.
Well, you got young kids. It's easy now. That's like my trick for going to sleep, though, is remembering old climbs I've already done sometimes. And I have that sequence still in me. Yeah, I was just thinking, about that whole prep and like dumbing it down. And I see you have like a journal of just like, it's a big wall to like try to...
There's a lot to break down.
Yeah. And like, do you tick like I saw tick marks?
Yeah, I ticked everything.
Ticked everything.
Well, not everything. I mean, I ticked the things that matter.
Did you brush them, Alex?
No.
Oh my God. Don't let Schulte hear this.
No, I hate that kind of stuff, especially because with big walls, you're like, it rains. Like, who cares?
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and if somebody cares, they can change the ticks. They can move stuff around, like whatever. People can do their own thing. It's like chalk.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I wasn't putting any like landing strips on ticks, I was just marking left, right the whole way.
I'm just giving you shit.
But also for something like the freerider, you only have to tick key parts of certain pitches here and there. And in general, I'm kind of like, anybody else up here is probably psyched on a tick mark because they're like, thank God, because it can be kind of daunting otherwise. It's just like a blank wall of white granite.
I think in the movie you say something like, it's the most impressive rock face in the world, or something to that effect right in the beginning. Something about just, it's freaking incredible.
Yeah.
Now it's been like 8 years.
Yeah, it's true. 8 years.
We're old now.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
There's a lot of emotion around El Cap from the climbing world. Like I think about Valley Uprising, which I love Valley Uprising, by the way. Great movie. And it's so kind of obvious that it leads to free soloing El Cap, right? Like, it's like, okay, like guys did it with a rope. You do it faster, you do it with less aid.
And then free climbing, and then, all the things. Yeah, exactly. It's an obvious progression for sure.
And, now 8 years goes by, and I don't know if it's for you, but like, what do you see that could be bigger or more impressive in climbing?
Well, you could flash solo. Okay, William Moss just flashed the freerider in a day.
Yeah,
kind of like, I'll just do that without a rope. But I hope nobody ever does that.
I did think about that. I was just like, oh God, dude, someone might. Who knows?
It's hard to imagine that. That'd be. Maybe. I would be very impressed. I'll put it that way.
Is the gap between what Warren Harding did and you did as big as the gap between someone on-sighting or flashing?
In some ways, yeah. Don't you think?
I don't know.
Because I put so much prep over the years because I'd climb the wall, I don't know, at least 40 or 50 times before I free soloed it, probably. Not the specific route, not necessarily all practicing, but had just climbed parts of El Cap. I'd done link ups on El Cap, I'd done speed. And all of that makes you feel more familiar with. That's kind of the interesting thing. I think coming back to Yosemite now, I probably could on-site solo the rostrum, let's say. Except that the rostrum was one of my first free solos ever in Yosemite, and that's how you learn how to do all the things. And that, I don't know if I could have learned how to do it without doing all the stepping stones. And so I think, you can conceive of somebody coming to Yosemite and flash or on-site soloing some of these routes, but it's hard to learn how to do that without doing the actual routes themselves. Actually, so in the film Free Solo, I have that failed attempt where I do the free blast slabs and then like cheat and give up and come down. Anyway, so that day I was all bummed about not sending. It's not in the film because they didn't know how to document this. But after we were done, I biked over and I sold Astroman, which I hadn't done in I don't know how many years.
Wow.
Well, because I felt all warmed up and I wanted to free solo El Cap, but I hadn't, and I was like, damn it. Anyway, so I free soloed Astroman that afternoon, and then I did the rostrum that evening. And then we shot photos, like a bunch of the stuff in the film of me soloing the Excellent Adventure, whatever, which is a route on the rostrum. I think we filmed a lot of those close-ups that evening, like after I'd soloed the rostrum. But anyway, so I wound up doing free blast, Astroman, and rostrum in a day, which kind of adds up to an El Cap-ish day. But going back to Astroman that afternoon, I don't know, it must have been like 5 or 10 years since I had free soloed Astroman before that. And so it felt like, I mean, it wasn't on-site soloing, because obviously I remember some of it, but it kind of felt like flash soloing, so I don't really remember any of the sequences, and I hadn't been up there in a while. You're sort of like, where does it go? Like, which of these cracks? And it was interesting revisiting it, because, in some ways it felt easy because I, was prepping for El Cap. In other ways I was kind of like, this is like kind of extreme, Yeah, and then same with the rostrum.
I don't understand how you knew that you could do like 3,000 feet, in just one push.
Well, I mean, I simuled it with Tommy the week before, and we did like 6 hours en route. So I kind of knew that. And I'd done the free triple in 2012, which I guess was 5 years before. I mean, I've freed El Cap in various states of fatigue over the years as parts of different link ups and different things.
It came to mind for me because you're like, oh, I did free blast, and then I cruised over and did those. And that gives you like an idea of just like your skin holding up. Like, I guess all those things were things that you can kind of prep, you can do a simul climb, but there's an element of just, you can't try it unless you do it. And it always struck me as like, how do you know, like, did you bring any food or water? It doesn't show any of that stuff. Like, you have little stashes
on
up
the
there?
actual free solo, I had some stashes here and there. The camera guys put some stuff in certain places. I mean, I would have just left it all myself, but it just made sense because people are wrapping in all over the wall for different positions. So I think there were maybe 2 ledges where I had food and water. And then up at the top, I caught up with one of the riggers and took his water. But, it's...
Yeah, so go back to that earlier question, like, is there anything out there that you know of that you feel like would be the next step in like a clean style on like a...
Well, you mean like next steps in climbing? Because I think next steps in climbing, we're kind of seeing a lot of those. I mean, this year in particular with people, flash soloing El Cap and climbing 15, like all these hard grades, and just a lot has happened this year. But what we haven't seen is any next steps in soloing. And I don't think we've seen any real like big steps in speed climbing or soloing or rope soloing or like any of the kind of fringe, like extreme side of climbing.
Yeah, what would be the big step? Like what?
Well, like one obvious thing would be free soloing the triple, let's say. But that's tough because a big piece of half dome fell off, so it doesn't go free anymore. So that's a challenge. And then like one of the pitches fell off, but so now there's a bolt ladder, so it wouldn't be free soloing. Now the easiest quote unquote free route is the direct, which is 14A. So that's kind of a bummer for free soloing. It's a 14A slab. So that's the challenge. I mean, nobody's ever free soloed Watkins. That's like a similarly sized wall to Half Dome and El Cap. I mean, it's a little smaller, but it's still very hard. That's 513. I don't know.
I just don't know if those hold the same gravitas.
Yeah, they don't have the same cachet. They're not rad the way El Cap is. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Like,
I mean, I will say that whenever I hear about people on-site free soloing, God, I don't want to like put this out into the ether to encourage people to do it.
It'll be on you, and some oversight 19-year-old has a breakup, and dude, on-site soloing El Cap would be so scary. Like, honestly, you wouldn't even know where you're going. Like, because the thing is, the first time you climb with a rope, like you'd be consulting a topo nonstop. You'd be like, which crack? Like the free blast slabs are pretty counterintuitive. Did you watch the film of Babsy and Jacopo of Babsy flashing the freerider?
No.
It's this really beautiful. It's like a BD film. Like, I started watching it, I was totally into it. It's beautiful. But it's interesting because they're doing the free blast slabs and they're legitimately not sure where to go because they're flashing and they don't know. Well, so like on the first free blast slab, you don't even clip one of the bolts because it's off route, so you can't get to it. But so if you're up there flashing, you'd be like, well, there's the bolt, but I actually go over there. And you would never know that unless there's tons of chalk on the route right then. And even then, you'd be like, well, that's weird. There's chalk over here because the bolt's over there. You're like, that's weird. Because it was put up in 1960 or whatever. It just has random bolts here and there. People aid climb it different ways. It'd be so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what it is that I find interesting about that and why I started off our whole chat talking about style or ethics is like, in some ways, climbing still boils down to like you're a kid and you're like, I want to go climb that tree. Right? Like, I want to get to the top of
I'm gonna
that.
go do something cool.
And just like, I don't know, I want to get up there. Like, and you don't, it's like very different to rehearse something like, and as a climber or experienced climber, like, I'm not saying that I could do anything you're doing, but I understand this idea of kind of dumbing it down.
Working up to it.
Yeah. You know, like that makes sense to me. But there's something about the adventure side of just like, I walked up to this mountain, I'm going to get up there, dude. Like, and when I would see those articles of people, like on-site free soloing, I'd just be like, wow. Like,
I mean, I've done a lot of on-site soloing in my life, but you just do it at such a different margin. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to keep it so much more within your comfort zone, basically.
All right, I want to put this out there, and that's terrible. Although, I remember, did you get crap for like popularizing free soloing, or like did people say like, oh, dude, you're going to...
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have gotten tons of questions like, oh, you know, like, are you a bad influence? Are you encouraging kids to do dangerous things? But I'm kind of like, man, fewer people free solo now than they did when the movie came out, and fewer people free solo then than 10 years before. I mean, I would say that free soloing has been steadily dying off for the entire time that I've been a climber, despite the popularity of the film Free Solo. So, you know, and despite the popularity of Valley Uprising and other films that you could say glorified the sort of Stone Master lifestyle, or, you know, that type of free soloing.
Yeah, I jokingly sometimes say like we should bring the danger back into climbing, and it's a joke because like you're saying, wherever people want to do a climb, enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get on them. Like I'll be there with you, supporting you. But I think that one of the reasons why I've stuck with climbing is I think about some of those times when I was a kid, and I got scared on the Hanscling, and I confronted myself and pushed through.
You overcome. That's I mean, those are the formative experiences in climbing, when you feel like you've learn something about yourself or challenge yourself. And
you know, I just felt like I was a different person through my whole life. You know, you just carry something with you. You're like, oh, I know who I am when it gets real bad.
Well, in a way, it's like, how do you build self-confidence as a human without overcoming challenges, basically? Like, how do you have a well-founded sense of confidence without challenging yourself?
Can't just repeat a mantra. You can't just say like...
I mean, well, maybe you can, but I would argue that like it carries a little more weight when you know that you can, like when the shit hits the fan, you can handle it.
Yeah, well, what I often say is that you can't know that about yourself until you kind of go into that epic. And then I often have found that I don't always handle myself the way I thought I was when I'm sitting here talking tough in a chair with you.
Totally. Yeah, it's easy when you're sitting on the podcast to be like, oh no, when it gets scary, I send. And then the reality is you're like, then I went home.
But it's kind of a thing that I do love about, I mean, this could be about sports or life, is just getting confronted with yourself.
And your own limitations, and like what happens when you try your hardest and you just can't do it. And it's just too hard or too scary or whatever.
Well, and
like, what do you do then?
You know, I told you that I kind of climbed as a kid, and then I didn't climb for another like 6 or 7 years. I think one of the things that brought me back to it was because some of those early times were subtly traumatizing, and like I still remember some of the really scary moments I had that I came out okay with. And then, you know, I almost think that I seek them out. I am risk averse. I am a wuss. I do not want to get hurt, but I do want to find out what I'm made of. I do want to, it's almost like you got to keep checking in on your self-confidence. Like, are you still who you think you are?
You know, you think everybody wants that to some extent, like to know what they're made of.
Yes.
Everybody wants to test themselves. And particularly in the modern world where you just aren't going to be tested. Like for the average person growing up in urban society in the US, you're just not going to be tested that often. And certainly not in any kind of physical risk-taking sense. Like your actual life is for the most part very safe, very comfortable. It's like all pretty good. I mean, and that's why we seek out this type of elective hardship where you're like, I'm going to choose this challenge that really pushes me, because otherwise you don't often have those kinds of life-defining moments where you find out about yourself. I think the average American can go years without having anything that really pushes them deeply outside their comfort zone. And actually, since we're on a podcast, and this will be my little soapbox, I mean, and I think that that's part of the rise of depression, anxiety, like neurological, like all the things that stress people out. I think in some ways the response is not having things to actually worry about in your life. You know what I mean? It's like when you're not confronted by real threats, real danger, real whatever, you just allow other things to get bigger in your life, to take their place, I think. I think that all the time. Like I do a lot of work travel, like to fly for corporate speaking and things like that. And so I'm like in airports. You're kind of like, man, you see people in airports who are so stressed about like, what if it's late? What if whatever? Like, what if and you're kind of like, dude, it's all so chill. Like, this is all totally fine. There's nothing to stress about with any of this. And I think if you have the right types of hardship in your life, you can keep that perspective. But I think if your life is a little too comfortable, you're like, but what if it's late? Like, what if I miss my ride to wherever? You're like, who freaking cares? Anyway, that's my soapbox.
Oh, I love it. There was a part in the film where you did like a little dub over. It was a little cheesy, but
Is it the warrior culture?
The warrior,
thing?
yeah.
Oh, that's so cheesy. I hate that. I hated that went in the movie. You want the backstory for that
Please.
whole thing?
Yeah.
Freaking, the section in Morocco where Tommy and I are climbing big walls? Mm-hmm. That whole trip to Morocco, I think I was there 3 weeks, and Tommy and I did this link up that was totally epic, and we were really psyched. And then Tommy flew home, and then I had another week where I free soloed this other wall. We were there like a month, like working on these things. It was all pretty hardcore. In the film, it winds up being 5 minutes of B-roll. It's just kind of scenic footage, and they don't really do justice to it, but that's fine. It worked better for the film narratively and all that. Anyway, that whole trip to Morocco, I was watching some TV show, Spartacus, I think. It's like some trashy, whatever. It's like Gladiator, Spartacus is like ancient Roman slaves fighting as gladiators. But so I got into this whole kick where I was like, free soloing is like modern blood sport. It's like the only sport where, the consequences are death. And I'm sort of like, this is just like watching gladiators. So I was like, this is so hardcore. And so we were doing this pretty hard climbing. And then whenever I was back at the gîte, these little things, you just like eat your couscous and then retire to your room to just like watch trashy television for a while. And so anyway, that whole warrior culture monologue thing came from some interview they did where I'd been watching too much Spartacus and I just was ranting about it. And then they used it and I was like, God, that's so embarrassing. But a lot of people really like it, so I'm kind of like, whatever. It's fun.
I mean, clearly it resonated with me that I remembered it.
Yeah, exactly.
I gave you crap about being cheesy, but...
Yeah, no, it is super cheesy. But that's what happens when you watch too much violent television.
It struck me as kind of what you were saying, where we aren't warriors anymore, or at least most people probably aren't. They're keyboard warriors in the airport.
Yeah, you're just so rarely confronted with mortality. Like, you rarely think about death. You rarely are actually afraid for your safety. And I mean, I'm saying this, we're both sitting here in very comfortable, privileged lives and stuff. I mean, obviously there are people in the country who are struggling with like real existential things, but none of them are listening to your podcast. And so like anybody listening to this is in total safety and comfort. Like, if you care about board climbing, like, your scene is freaking fine.
So how do you think about dosing that and danger? And, you have kids now. And I think about this with my kids, where even if you don't climb, I'm sure that when you look at your past, you had just these like random things where things just almost went bad. Like you were with your buddy and they were driving dumb and they almost flipped the car or something. You almost like flipped off the thing.
I did flip my car. The van in free solo, I freaking rolled it.
You did,
Oops,
dude?
Yeah, I wrecked it. Yeah,
I just feel like it's hard to become an adult without having these moments where just you kind of got lucky. Not like I was prepared and I was in the right, just like kind of get lucky. And I just think about kids or even myself and understanding how to dose risk and deal with the desire to find out what you're made of, have a little taste of danger, but then not
go too far.
Not die.
Not die.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just keep doing the thing. I mean, the thing is, eventually you're going to die. And when you do die, whether it's, we're both turning 40, we're freaking middle-aged.
Don't tell people
I'm just saying, but like, so the thing is, turning 40, you're like, oh, we're middle-aged. But so if we die at 60, we'll be like, oh, that was too young. If we die at 85, we'll still be like, man, it would have been nice to make it a little longer. Like, basically, whatever age you die, it's going to feel too young. And in the grand scheme of things, the difference between 30 years and 40 years or 50 years, like, none of it is that significant, really. And so, when you just embrace the fact that you're going to die either way, you just have to do stuff until you do die. And you just do the best you can. But also, I mean, it's interesting because your framing of like, oh, you do a lot of things and you kind of get lucky. Like, you get away with a lot of things. But that said, you also have a lot of things that are unlucky. It's like, I don't know, like I just said that I rolled my van from free solo. And it was totally my own fault. I was driving by myself. It was a total botch. I was like driving too fast, not paying attention. And anyway, I like went around a corner and went off the road. But it was like a big bermed corner hill. Like, I'd almost slowed down enough that had it been on flats, I would have just gone into this field and stopped. But instead, because it was like this bermed hillside, I just went off the hill and then went airborne and then landed and rolled over. And so, on the one hand, it's complete user error, totally stupid on my part. And I'm super lucky in that I wasn't injured and it's just property damage and you're like, whatever. And it turns out that like the next week we found out that my wife was pregnant and there were no seats in that van anyway. So you're kind of like, well, we need a different van. And so you're kind of like, oh,
silver lining.
Like, the Lord giveth and taketh away. But But the other way to look at it is that I was pretty unlucky that the one place that I just was like not paying attention to going too fast happened to be on this big bermed hillside thing. Because I'm like, man, had that happened anywhere flat, it would have been totally fine. It would have been very scary, but fine. And I wouldn't have wrecked my car. And so I think my takeaway is that it's not worth overthinking, like, is this good luck? Is this bad luck? Is this whatever? Like, this is just life. You know, it's like things happen. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's good, sometimes it just doesn't totally matter. You know, it's like a nonstop string of like things like that happening.
Yeah, you kind of touch on this in the film where you kind of talk about, you know, we could die at any moment. You know, you might have a meteor hit or an earthquake. And I just got to tell you, when I watch it, you try to communicate that this goal of yours is, you know, just something you're drawn to, and, you know, we're all going to die at some point. And like, I think it's hard for an average person to connect those dots. That's like, I don't know if most people have any goal or even any person in their life or anything that they're willing to die for.
The thing is, I wouldn't say, if I thought that I was going to die free soloing all cap, I would have just put that to the side. You know what I mean? Like, the whole point is that I think I'm not going to die doing it.
Yeah, it's good. I hear you, but it definitely also, maybe it's the way the movie portrayed you, just that you're like, no, I know there's consequences, but there's consequences.
Yeah,
there's consequences.
So like, if I die climbing later in my life, you know, would I do it all differently? I'm like, I'm not totally sure, because in a way, I mean, climbing has been at the center of my life for 30 years. It's given me all my purpose, all the opportunity in my life, you know, like all the films of the free solo. I don't know, you know, it's like I've had 30 great years given to me by rock climbing. And if I die in a climbing accident, let's say something mundane and like not risk taking, but like, you know, some kind of anchor failure or something, just something like, oh, I was rappelling and like some weird thing happens. And, you know, obviously that could happen at some point. Would I do it all over? I'm like, I don't know. You know, I've had great purpose in my life. And the thing is, there's freaking 9 billion people on earth, and we're all going to die in different ways. I'm kind of like, I've had a good go. I've done things that I'm proud of. I'm like, that's fine.
You said that earlier, like, oh, I'm going to turn 40 in like a month or something. And, you know, I'm still here, still doing it. And you know what it reminded me of? You actually probably know this guy. Do you know Fernando Mota?
From the Central Valley? Like,
yeah.
He used to root set at the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know him.
Unfortunately, Fernando passed away about 10 years ago.
In a base jumping?
Yeah. So I actually knew Fernando from Cave Rock when he had first moved here from South America.
Okay.
And he was like 18 with his brother. And he's, total wild man, amazing guy. And I remember bumped into him in the city. I was like out drinking. I bumped into him, and he's like, oh, dude, it's my birthday. And he was like 35 or something. I was like, oh, dude, you're getting up there. And I just will never forget, he like looks at me. He's just like, yeah, man, still here, still doing it. And just like the gratitude and appreciation for him continuing to get to do the things he loved. And there was no no regrets there, no concerns, just like gratitude for the life that he was living.
And I mean, I think that's a good way to live, because at a certain point you're going to die either way. It's like, you may as well have a good time, and not like in a frivolous good time, but you may as well enjoy what you're doing up until when you do die.
Yeah.
Because like the thing is, if you play it super safe, you're really conservative, you do nothing risky with your life, you're still going to die at some point, and then you're going to look back and be like, man, maybe I should have taken a few more calculated risks here and there to do the things that matter to me.
It's interesting. I can see this even in your attitude, where you just don't worry so much about like the grade or who's watching you, and just you pull on. You're like, do my best.
Yeah, you just try your best. Some days, I mean, and not to say that I'm not unaffected by that, because it is embarrassing when you can't freaking do your board proj or whatever. Like, you're just sucking.
Got the shallow points,
like,
dude. You got
shallow. I don't know what it is. I think I have the weak fingers is the bigger problem. But we all work with what we got. Just do your best. I mean, one of the things, like all this talk of like risk and death and all that, I mean, I think a lot of this is colored by the fact that several family members died when I was in my late teens. Like, my dad died when I was 19, and both my grandfathers on both sides died when I was 16-ish. And so I think that it's a good reminder at a formative time in life that life will be ending at some point. You know, you're sort of like, oh, it just sets you on a path where you're like, either way, you're going to die. And I mean, particularly my dad died unexpectedly of a heart attack at 55. And, you know, I think that he had done a lot of the conventional, I mean, actually he had traveled widely, and he had like a great 20s, and he loved his life to a point, but then he kind of did the conventional, like, get married, have kids, work hard to provide for my kids, blah, blah. And like, I don't think he was particularly happy with any of that. And then he died unexpectedly before he had a lot of plans for like, when I retire, I'll do this and this and this, but then he died. And you're kind of like, you know, I don't think you can afford to wait for some things. Like, ideally, you just want to live in a way that's in line with your values and meaningful to you. I'm sort of like, that's what I'm saying. For me, the 30 years of climbing that I've had, I'm like literally every day I wake up psyched to do a thing, and I have a goal, I have a purpose. I'm like, I mean, of course, some days you wake up and you feel busted and you're tired and whatever, but particularly with kids now. But in general, I've basically been psyched on life for 30 years. I'm like, that's so great. Like, I would want anybody to have that. And if that means taking certain calculated risks, then that's great.
You were making fun of me. You were like, oh, dude, you're a finance bro. But something that I didn't tell you is that I was in finance or, whatever in the corporate world. And then my dad passed away and I was not having a good time in the corporate world. Who would have thought?
Yeah, surprising, shocking.
And that was really the catalyst for me leaving the corporate world and doing my own, whatever, all the different things I had often did. But what I remember is we'd get together, all us miserable, low-level staff working 100 hours a week, and we'd all complain, oh, this sucks, this is awful. And I just remember saying to them like, oh, if I wasn't here, I would just go climb. I'm like, oh, I could, live in a van, which is totally like these people don't even know what that means.
Totally.
And their ideas were, oh, I could switch to accounting or I could do SEC reporting. Like their idea was like, oh, I need to go to a different company.
Move laterally to the, totally.
And the reason why I bring it up is that they would say that they were jealous of me in the sense that I had something I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think about this a lot now with our friends and kids and things, because I feel like with parenting, I mean, probably the most important thing as a parent is to help your kid find something that they want to do, that they're happy to push themselves in, that, something that gives them purpose. Because I mean, is there anything better in life than having a reason to get up every day and being psyched and, having a project, in the broadest sense of project, like some kind of goal, having something to work on? Like, what is parenting if not trying to help your kid find something that they are good at or like, like whatever it is that gets them out of bed?
Yeah, I'm about to ask you how do you go from good to great question, but something I noticed along the way, even way back then in my corporate world, was that you can't be great at something if you don't love it. It's very hard.
I totally agree. But you just can't put the hours, you can't put the reps in if you don't love it. Dave, have you read the book Open, the Andre Agassi memoir? It's like maybe the best sports memoir. Yeah, it's like the best sports memoir of all time.
It's my number one recommended book, and no one's ever come back to me and said like, that was boring. It's
incredible.
The best, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. But I think one of the interesting takeaways in Open was that he hates tennis. Like the whole time, he hates tennis. And you're kind of like, how can you be one of the world's best tennis players when you hate what you're doing? It's like, it's crazy.
Well, you just completely blew my whole theory out of the water.
Well, no, but the thing is, I mean, he was a great tennis player, but he seemed deeply unhappy. His career, like he's not Roger Federer, like, or maybe he was, I don't know. I don't know tennis well enough, but you know what I mean? Like he's a great tennis player, but kind of like a deeply unhappy person that's struggling with a lot of things. And you're kind of like, it's just hard to be great when everything else isn't in line.
It was funny how in that book, he's talking about all these things that he did that made him popular and famous. And he did it out of like self-loathing, like, oh, I was bald, so I had these crazy toupees or maybe shaved his, I can't remember. It's been years since and it was like this whole like behind the scenes that no one knew. And I'm just curious, like, I mean, you're that figure. People watch you on Free Solo and think you're just the most amazing thing. Like, did you have anything that was like behind the scenes?
Have I rebelled?
Well, I just mean like, do you have anything that people may look up to you and think you're just badass, and the reality is like behind the scenes you were like miserable at the time or like not feeling good?
Well, probably the whole film Free Solo is probably more stress than people see in the film, just because like having the camera crew around, it's just a lot. It's just having people in your space watching you all the time.
Just
you're
like
oh, this is so embarrassing. This is decidedly less embarrassing. Like, I mean, because they shot for 2 years. I mean, we had scenes that they like followed me to the DMV. I was just like doing life stuff, and they're just like there at the camera crew, and you're like, God, this is so embarrassing. It's like reality TV when you're like getting in line at the grocery store and there's a guy behind you with the camera, and you're like, God, you're never gonna use this. Just stop rolling. Like, please put the camera away. It's so embarrassing.
The camera in the van so often was really surprising. I guess it makes sense because it's your home, but vans aren't very big.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Yeah. Was there a guy there, or was it just a camera set?
Yeah. It was either this guy Claire or this guy Mikey, but like two good friends. But that was part of the thing. I mean, they're shooting verite. It's like a style. It's like basically you embed with somebody long enough. Actually, it's funny, in bed in the van, but embed long enough that you sort of, the subject forgets that they're being filmed nonstop, and then it just becomes normal life. But in that case, everyone I was working with was close enough friends that you feel fine.
I mean, I'm just going to point that first thing I said, where you're like, you made climbing cool, Alex. And what's interesting is you are really good at being famous, man. you are.
Well, the thing is, because I think it just doesn't matter. It's all the same. I try to be the same in front of the camera, away from the camera, whether it's an important camera, whether it's an unimportant camera. You know what I mean? You're like, you just try to stay totally consistent all the time. I don't know. I just am me.
It's
like,
not trash.
Actually, somebody just like an actor just reached out to me about shooting a cameo in some movie that he's filming, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like fine. Like I could do something like that, but I was like, I hope you realize that I can't act at all. So if it's like cameo as self, being exactly straight, exactly how I always am, then yeah, I can do that. But I literally can't do anything else. So don't like ask me to come shoot a scene because I can't do scenes. You know.
It's funny because you talk about being introverted. You even talk about this in the film where you're standing up in front of a bunch of kids and you're like, oh, this would be really hard for me in the past. And now it's just like second hat for you. It's cool to see as a part of the community. I've been doing it for 30 years too, and climbing was not a thing back then.
Yeah.
And, you know, just having you as the face who I also appreciate that you really do explain it, and, you know, maybe you dumb it down in some sense. You have to when you're talking to 60 Minutes.
Totally.
But I feel like you don't hide anything about the reality of what you're doing or the consequences. And I appreciate that. I think it's cool.
I'm doing my best, you know.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, and that's, how do you go from good to great?
I don't know. You even prepped me on this. Like, I don't know. You just keep doing the thing forever. Eventually you get better at it, hopefully. Or if you keep doing the thing with intention and real effort for long enough, you can't get worse.
We're in here training. We're on the freaking board, and you go and hangboard afterwards, doing one-arm pull-ups. Yeah, like the fire is still in you, even though you might have
because
to turn
I'm turning
40.
40 next month, you know, so I'm having a middle-age resurgence.
Dude, we gotta stop. I keep doing this where I talk about being older, or it's like gonna change. And I feel like that's the worst thing we should do, is somehow put out there that because we're getting older.
But that is reality. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think 40 means anything, but certainly when I turn 47, I'm going to be less powerful than when I was 23, let's say. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's setting world records in their late 40s in any sport. Not to say that you can't get better as a climber in a lot of ways, not to say you can't do meaningful climbs, not to say you can't do things that you're proud of, but, you know, there's a reality. And I think that this is part of embracing your own mortality and things like that. I'm like, this is fine. You know, it's like, I'm totally fine declining through the second half of my life. You know, I mean, I guess that's a little bit depressing in a way, but you're kind of like, I'm going to die at some point, and I'm going to do the best I can the whole time. And at some point you'll decline. Like that's age.
So I love that. Just keep showing up no matter what.
I mean, the thing is, like, I'm hoping I could still climb 14A in my 60s, let's say. I mean, that doesn't seem out of the question. I mean, one of my friends in Vegas just climbed 14A at 65. And actually, he is quite a bit stronger than me on the board in certain ways, like, or on the hangboard. Like, he can hang a bunch of things that I literally can't. Like the slopey 2-finger pocket on the Beastmaker 2000. Like, I can't even weight it, and he can easily hang it with body weight.
And he's how old?
65. Yeah, but he's been training a long time, and he's obviously very strong. Yeah, so, you know, there are things like that where I'm like, that's crazy. But anyway, I'm like, I suspect that I'll still be able to climb near that level at that age. And I'm like, that is enough for me to be totally happy as a climber.
I want to say you were chasing 15A for a while. Is that still
on
the table?
The joke was the race to 9A, which is 14D, and haven't technically sent 9A, and would love to. I
saw on your 8A you got a 9A on there.
It's 8C plus, I think. Sadly,
did
I did log it. No, I thought it. No, actually, that route's hard for JSTAR because it's really spanny. It has this huge reach in it. But actually, a couple random. One kid did that second try. Perfectly suited him, and he's incredibly strong. This guy's Simon from SoCal. Do you know Simon Bankert?
Bankert?
Yeah.
Yes, I do know Simon.
Yeah, he's incredibly talented. Very troubled.
Very troubled.
But very talented. But he did that route second go.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of like, it's probably not 9A.
For maybe his first 9A too.
Yeah. But also anybody that sees him climb are kind of like, whoa, he is insanely good.
Insanely strong.
So, yeah, and it perfectly suits him because it's like jumpy, gym climby roof stuff. But for me, what mattered about that route is that it was so my anti-style. And the first time I tried it, I was like, this is impossible. And then I eventually did it. I was like, oh, this is insane. I was so psyched.
Well, so when we started climbing, I don't think 15A existed or 9A plus.
Yeah,
I don't think it existed.
Exist, yeah.
And maybe V15 existed because
friend
Nicole, dude, he did Dreamtime. Oh, that was like 2000 or something.
Okay, yeah, so close. But
I just never know with Fred, and he just did hard stuff so early. It's hard to remember. Yeah, did you ever think that you would end up climbing the top grade of
Well, I
the
still
hill
haven't
back
reached.
then?
That's the thing, is that I haven't reached the standards of the 1990s. Like, I've tried Necessary Evil, the first 14C in the country, or whatever. Chris Sharma put up this 14C in mid 90s.
Mid 90s, yeah.
And I tried. I never quite did it. I was close to doing it, and it got too cold, and I've basically never been back. And that was a long time ago. But either way, I've never done it. It's very hard. I'm kind of like, man, that was the standard 30 years ago, and I still haven't matched that.
How quickly did he do it too?
Like, yeah, quickly enough. As an aside, I mean, the thing is, I've spent a lot of this whole chat talking about like how bad I am at certain types of climbing and like how weak I am at whatever. But the thing is, I mean, I think like I'm not physically gifted as a climber, but I think that the drive, the desire to climb harder grades, that like pushing myself at harder grades has allowed me to do all the other stuff that I'm probably better suited for and sort of like more in a lot of ways, like the adventure climbing, the like big rad solos, the link ups, like all that kind of stuff. Like J-Star and I have talked about this a lot because we lived together and we hiked to different crags. And so it's like we're hiking an hour up to the crag and you have a lot of time to talk about it. And he was kind of like, oh, you should focus on harder grades, focus on like, because my whole life I've always been like, man, I wish I climbed 9A. But I'm like, the reality is I actually don't know if I really care about setting 9A. It's more the pursuit. It's like the working on climbing 9A allows me to do all these other things, like do the speed record on the nose and like feel comfortable like doing big solos or whatever. I'm kind of like, whether you actually reach the goal or not doesn't matter so much as having the pursuit. And so, I mean, it would be very satisfying to climb 9A, I'm sure. But then you just be like, well, 9A plus, baby, let's go.
Totally.
It's more about just like having something to work on that makes you good at all the other stuff you care about.
I always argued that climbing harder is actually more fun because it's more intricate. Like, it's not climbing harder because now I have a higher grade, but just, if you first start climbing, you're climbing a
you get to
easier
do
ladder.
cooler things.
You get to do cooler things.
Yeah, and it's like cleaner, it's safer, it's like way more inspiring. Like blank overhanging walls, you're like, that's amazing, I can't believe that you can climb that. And then you look at some bolted 5.6 like ledgy slab thing and you're like, that looks dangerous. Like, are you sure we should climb that?
It's so fun to just be able to walk up and just say like, I want to climb this one, I don't know the grade.
Yeah, I mean, being a strong climber allows you to be a confident climber and just show up and climb anything and have a good time.
My goal was to not let you say so many negative things about your climbing, because I watch you climb now. I've watched many videos and like you are an extremely technical climber, a really good climber. And the one thing I remember you talking about was this like quiet foot drill that you thought.
Yeah, from childhood.
Yeah, like just that stuck out in my head, and I just want to hear it really quick to see if
placing your feet quietly.
Is it just literally that?
Yeah, I mean, place your feet with intention. Like, you just don't want to hear people kicking the wall. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's a waste of effort. It's sloppy. Like, quiet feet is like placing your feet like a cat, pouncing. Like,
and when you're on like those slippery slabs, like, are you?
No, you just place it very precisely, very carefully, and then you fully trust it. You load it. I mean, that's so much of slab climbing is full commitment, just believing in the footholds.
Yeah.
And sometimes they blow, but you're gonna fail unless you go full commitment on it. That's the thing, is when you go full commitment, they blow way less often than you think. When you go like 70% commitment, where you're kind of lightly weighting it but not quite, you're way more likely to blow your feet.
Yeah, I feel like that could be some analogy to a lot of climbing of just going
full
for the
commitment
whole,
all the time.
Full commitment.
You just, if you're gonna do it, do it.
Actually, that was one of my big takeaways from talking to J-Star. Is he said one of the things that helped him with on-sighting was just
full commitment.
Not hesitating.
Dude, so this exact thing. So I just went up and did a route on the Hulk, and this route Airstream is like 13 ARB, and I on-sighted it, so it has like two 12 plus pitches and a supposed mid 5 or easy 513 pitch, and they had like a tiny bit of chalk on them, but not much. Very technical, cryptic granite stemming and like corners and sort of weird. And so I got up there, I was like, this is, it's technical and it's on your feet, so like maybe I'll be okay, but there's no real chalk. And I was like, this is pretty. But so I just went full commitment. I on-sighted all the hard stuff, just every foothold was just full belief, like just kicking blank mirror glass walls, and it was like, just believe in it. And it all worked. And I was like, this is a freaking mirror. I was pretty proud of myself, because I was like, I was shocked, and I've been training in the garage a bunch, and I've been like doing weighted hangs on little edges, and I was like, oh, my fingers feel strong. And I went up there as like day 2 or day 3. I've been sort of intentionally doing stuff like that when I'm tired, because, that's the point. And I was like, oh, I on-sighted, this is amazing. Anyway, then we simul climb to the summit. Like, so I linked some 510, some 511, doing whatever. Anyway, I wound up slipping off the 511 pitch because I was in the same just full commitment, like whatever, just believing in any foothold. And I even had a moment where I was like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. And I was like, just go for it, because I'd basically just gone for everything up to there. And then I whipped, so I'm like, and it was kind of like, because I on-sighted this whole route except for slipping on this 511 pitch. I fell far enough that I was back at the anchor, so then I just went again and sent. And that's fine. And I was kind of like, that's the trade-off when you go full commitment on stuff like that. And like with soloing and with a lot of trad climbing, I always keep enough in reserve that you're kind of like, oh, I'm climbing really carefully. I'm climbing, to like make sure that I don't slip or just randomly fall off. But then you can't really onsite at your limit that way. And so, yeah, it's trade-offs.
So when you did like the boulder problem or something, you're not like full commit, or you have like a little bit of margin?
Full commitment, but I practiced that so much. And I probably did have some margin in that just because, it's V7. It's not like limit for me, but no, I practiced that to shit. That was full commitment.
Like for me, one of the things that attracts me to scary climbing or dangerous climbing is that it often helps me tap into full commitment. And I feel like sometimes I climb my absolute best.
Yeah, that's the thing is you have moments of greatness where you're like, I can't believe I did that. That was amazing. And that's the thing on this route is I felt amazing on the hard pitches. I was like, I'm doing it. I can't believe I did these. And then I fell off the easy climbing. And I was kind of like, well, I guess that's the trade-off with like full commitment is every once in a while. And I've interviewed Adam Onder a couple times. I mean, he says the same kind of thing is that you basically have to take risks to onsite at your limit. And that means sometimes they bite you. It's like sometimes you slip at the second bolt and you're kind of like, oh, oops. Yeah, but that's the trade-off.
He does just kind of move fast and like have that risk. What do you think of him flashing that E11 Lexicon?
Oh yeah, pretty proud, huh?
I was impressed.
Yeah, totally. But when you look at him in French grades, you're kind of like, oh, him flashing like 8C or 8C plus or 8B plus, whatever it is, like he's done that a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not crazy. Because like Alex Megos flashed the path, that 14AR thing and outside cam or whatever.
Yeah, me and Carlo, like kind of, I don't want to say we argued about this, but we brought it up and Carlo was like, oh, dude, he has so much margin. Like, it's not that big.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he's flashed 15A. So flashing 14A on scary gear, kind of like, is it that different?
I feel like that 15A flash is still one of the most impressive things ever in climbing.
Ever, totally.
But yeah, I felt like it was that E11 flash was I was really impressed regardless of the grade because it seemed like a committing move too. It didn't seem...
I haven't watched the video, I don't know. But as someone who's flashed E8 or E9 or something, I've done a handful of like E8-ish onsites. I'm sort of like, Adam Onder is so much stronger than me that I'm like, yeah, he should be able to do a couple grades harder. That's not crazy. I mean, it's very impressive, but it does seem reasonable given his increased ability.
All right, man. Thanks for chatting with me.
No, it's a pleasure.
It's so fun. Thanks for sessioning with me too. Just nothing better than getting to session, little cherry on top with a podcast and just have a blast. And yeah, again, thanks for being the face of climbing, not dumbing it down when you talk to the muggles.
Yeah, the muggles.
And thanks for making climbing cool. My aunt was like, man, Josh, you must be a real badass climbing. You really hang it out there, don't you?
And you're like, I do, Auntie, I do.
I'm cool.
Like, yeah. It's badass every time.
All right, man. Thanks again. Good stuff.
No, pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/Testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.